So 6:16. Okay, that's 23 seconds.
This meeting to order at 6:30 here. We're going to wait on Mike Wall's cue as he's live streaming this on WTHO for us. So thank you, Mike Wall, for doing that. There is a quorum here tonight. Commissioner Taylor and Commissioner Wilson can out attend. And with that, we'll move right on into our invocation, and Reverend Pilgrim from Antioch is here with us tonight, so he has offered to give an invocation.
I greatly God, we love you. We thank you. Thanks for blessing us with another day, another opportunity to be here, come together as a community, Lord, to seek wisdom and on high. As Father, I pray, you pray for that wisdom, and you poured out wisdom on him, you poured out blessings upon him. I pray for unity throughout this community. I pray that the voice of the people will be heard. I pray above all that the voice of Almighty God will be heard. This is where we get privilege for this county that you've blessed us with to live here and be part of, and we give you the praise, honor, and glory. I pray that your spirit will just rule and reign in this building right now and throughout the decisions to be made, Lord. Your will be done. We give you all the praise, honor, and glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Item of business tonight is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion for approval? So moved. Commissioner Johnson, second by Commissioner Howland, all in favor? We move on to new business. The second item on our agenda tonight is the question and answer with the developer, moderated by Mike Wall. Good evening again. Before we get started, I want to set a few points of the quorum for tonight's meeting. Number one, this is not a public hearing for public input. This meeting is a question and answer session open to the public with the developer. The questions asked tonight are questions that have been submitted by the public to county staff or elected officials through email or phone call. Some of these questions may have been briefly mentioned at the Planning Commission, but require further discussion. Number three, after the question and answer, we will reserve a few minutes for members of the Board of Commissioners who may have an additional question. If time allows, questions may be submitted via note cards from the public, but we are going to try to keep this at about an hour and a half. Number five, please remain respectful and feel free to make notes for your elected officials or staff to find out additional information after this meeting. Number six, I would like to take the opportunity to thank the developer, Cameron Grogan, and Williams Brothers Development for being here and giving the Board of Commissioners this opportunity to ask you questions publicly and directly. This meeting is not required by zoning laws, but it is our effort to be transparent to the public and answer questions about the proposed project. Number seven, tonight's meeting is being live streamed currently on YouTube and WTHO. A public hearing for the zoning application will be next Tuesday, March 17th at 6:30 in the same room. The public will be allowed to sign up for public input for that meeting. So if you would like to speak directly to the board, you can come back next week and sign up for that. Lastly, again, thank you to Mike Wall and WTHO for graciously offering to stream this to the public on the local radio station and for serving as tonight's moderator. With that, I'll turn the floor over to Mike.
Thank you, Chase. Cameron, if you'll come up, and we'll fire later of a few questions beginning with project details and phasing. I have some 74 questions to ask, and we'd like to go home by, 9 o'clock for sure. So if you can keep your answers under a minute, that would be great. And a lot of these are yes, no questions. But again, thank you, Cameron, for being with us tonight. And I do enjoy having this opportunity, but I always prefer to talk to people from a room by myself. I really don't like an audience. So, do you plan to fully build out or complete the project in phases?
Yes. Phases.
So phases, what is the exact size, electrical load, and timeline for each phase of the project?
So we're feeling the same thing, once the concept starts running, just to kind of see what we can fit on the table. About 1.5 million square feet laid out. That was at 3 phases. Each phase takes about a year, and how we're coming along with each phase, about 100 to 150 megawatts each phase.
While the zoning permit covers the entire parcel, you will submit individual building permits for each phase?
Absolutely, sir. And land service permits before building permits.
And that's really the next question. You do understand you're required to submit a land service permit for the entire parcel, or in this case, multiple permits, if phased individually. If there are future phases, are they guaranteed or dependent on demand?
No, the entire project would be funded at the beginning. It would just be building phases because you can't really, and we would accelerate if demand is here. The phasing is really just, you can't physically build it all at once. You know, it's kind of you go from one building to the next, maybe 2 buildings at a time. But it's not a demand building. When it starts, the demand will be there for 100%. The phasing is more just the construction phase.
Okay, this next group of questions will pertain to community benefit and economic impact. And the first question under that subtitle is, how will this data center benefit local residents and taxpayers?
So, just the amount of tax revenue that comes in from the downstairs, we've given staff our estimates and construction of the equipment and land and everything where they can do their own math. You know, we've also provided some numbers on that of what that revenue could be. Roughly $25 million in revenue. That's year over year over year. We're not asking for any local incentives. The interesting, the great thing about data center too is, and hopefully we'll get it a little bit later, but it's not a big hiker, for lack of a better term, services, employee city services. You don't have a lot of employees, you got good employees, but it's not a big manufacturer. Bring in 1,000 employees, so you're going to need more housing, more kids in school, and in classrooms. It's very limited on taking those services, but to start really quick, in Loudoun County, Virginia, which we're hearing about tonight, is the biggest state. It has the most data centers per capita in the world, in the country. It has about 200 existing with more than 200 in development pipeline. They've done some stuff like there to go through it for every 4 cents, for every dollar that a data center brings in tax revenue, they take about 4 cents in services, EMS, schools, roads, that sort of thing.
And you sort of touched on this next question, and that beyond the temporary construction phase, how many permanent full-time jobs will be created, and what wage levels will be expected?
So about 125, give or take. That includes also, and then mostly contract, security, maintenance, janitorial, grounds. That wage rate in this, we're just going to do it per town, per city, changes, where you go, would be about a median income level, about 60 to 70,000 a year per employee.
And how many of those jobs are expected to be filled by local folks, not Benton County residents?
Well, I'll tell you what, there's none of them will be filled by, out of country, out of state, or the end users that bring, 100 people from state like that. It's not none of that. As far as the landlord, that's going to be definitely but we're not, they're always hired within the local school systems, universities, never shipping over outside of the country.
Do local residents currently have the training and experience required for the jobs that you would offer?
These aren't that there's some engineering jobs, but all of that is 2 degree, HVAC, mechanical plumbing, engineering, contractors, facility upgrades, facility maintenance. So it's not an advanced degree. Most of the jobs, the engineering jobs, are actually probably not the majority. So if not, it's not a huge undertaking to become qualified.
I think you've already answered this too, but I'll restate the question. What tax abatements or incentives are being requested?
Locally known.
What is the verified tax revenue to the county after abatements and incentives?
I'd rather not sort of verify. I know Graham's been doing some math, it's got an estimate.
I'm not ready to talk about school district, so there's several variables, depending on staff type, and for both the county and the school.
And the brain law we're running are numbers on that billions, or $1.4 billion in construction costs. That's an estimate. I can say for certain I would be low lower.
What is the net revenue to the county after infrastructure costs and service demands?
So infrastructure costs, again, we said it, on record that we are not requesting any infrastructure or payment or anything in the county. The road paving, the water and sewer extension would be on the right.
I think this has been asked and answered as well, but will there be a cost-benefit analysis to be made public? A cost-benefit for,
We could make that available by the time the utility gate, absolutely. And we have kind of the condition, we've talked a lot in the past weeks, we've planning commission, rightfully so about routes, transportation and construction routes. It'll be 2 good routes and only use 1 local road, everything else we see road. We've actually provided a condition to be presented to the board to put into a road improvement fund. This is additional cash for not 1 local road that we will be using.
You've already answered this, but again, I'll restate it. The projected tax revenue with all the phases completed, the projected tax revenue.
Our projection is for $1.4 billion project cost, about $25 million.
When will the project reach the break-even point where revenue exceeds costs?
Yeah, I think that's insinuating that we're going to ask for $50 million and give them back $25 a year. Yeah. We're not asking for that.
Or are they asking, when will you begin to have a return on your investment from the vendor?
That would be, once it's built, that would be having a return on investment. Again, I always just simplify it, because these things are big and they're new, they're not new, but they seem to be new. They're new as it is. It's similar to, I'm just going to keep using Chick-fil-A a little bit. I don't know when Chick-fil-A starts having a profit over a $3 million building, but the developer makes a profit and then Chick-fil-A turns around.
Does the development agreement include clawback provisions if hiring or investment commitments are not met?
So we don't have a development agreement, I guess it's usually a development agreement with the county. That would be something that if we did, we're working on another with the development authority, right? And if we were seeking some abatement, there would be some thresholds, right? You have to hire 100 people, or you have to hire 50 local people if you want these abatements. We're not asking for any abatements, so.
What guarantees exist if a company does not build out as promised?
So again, we've offered up a condition, and then it's been a big question mark on our use of word decommission. If we start it, then the land's not on the least expensive, there's no user, it's going to be built, right? As well, we can say that if it starts and isn't built, then we all need to go find a bunker to it, because we can talk extremes, but I can say that these have been around since computers have been around, 60 years. Not just computers we have around. They've changed, they've morphed, but there's never been just, you guys use it. Computing always is an experiment. right? We have phones, and that was new technology, and then we have mobile phones. And so the whole call centers became something, right? All data centers, we call enterprise data centers, might get Walmart might have their own data center. I worked on North American Express was their own data center. As those things for you, when I worked on 15 years ago as a lease, but their teams out, now they're doing a smaller newer AI modeling data centers. So we provide a condition note. Basically, it says it's built, and when you start, you leave, or it's used to be a data center, we remove anything that makes it a data center. Computing equipment, HVAC equipment, generators, and you'll be left with a small building that we use for manufacturing, battery energy storage, and building. I've got a list of things that can be used for. So I think that's good. And of course, we already have, your phone has some text including, so we think better to look from all this one off and have an experience in the building. And let's make it to where they're just going to sell it.
That is one of the questions. We can touch on how long these normally last, their expected lifespan.
Expected lifespan is about 30 years. And that's the shell of everything. And the computer just changes as technology changes. And right now, it's on an average of 2 years.
All right, the next group of questions pertain to power demand and electrical infrastructure. What is the total electrical load requested at full build-out?
Currently, we're looking at about 400 megawatts. That could change up or down, but right now, it's based on the power wholesaler that we're discussing with, the capacity that we made on the lines, and really this size project, right? It's too big for 100 megawatts, it's not big enough for a gigawatt, just a gigawatt. Just in the land size, we couldn't fit enough building to put enough computers, more than 500-600 megawatts of power. The technology changes, if more power comes online in 5, 6, 7 years, it could, but right now,
And for each phase, do the math for that 400 megs, as you're bringing in each phase, how much power would be used?
you're talking about 100 buildings, 50 megawatts.
Has any power provider confirmed in writing that the grid can support this demand at that location?
No, right now, we've agreed to have that in writing by IDP. Again, we have to say this is an early, the land use is the first thing we got on script. It cost a lot of money to get these studies. A year ago, they thought it was a good year site. Today, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then once the study is ready, and you want to lock in that power, it's millions of dollars in budget. And they're also yet to, they're not going to give Brandon or Karen typically, that power capacity. They're going to want to know, because I think what I put millions of dollars is money. So we will provide that for everyone to do. But this is a step that's needed to really get technology.
Similarly, will new transmission lines, substations, or easements be required?
So that's what we like to say. No, the power lines to the people on the ground will be extended. They run right to our site. There's another line that goes through the solar project. So if you needed to use it from there, we would just get it from there. But right now, no extensions, no easements, needed from employees, from private landowners. And then we will build a substation on site, a smaller substation, because you have to step down from those lines. So, you'll see substation being stepped up or stepped down, you'll have to have, because we can't support kind of a runoff thing.
And y'all vote for that? No other electrical upgrades? What impact will the project have on grid reliability, outages, and voltage stability?
None. So, when I heard Chris to answer that, step in, this was expertise, but it will have, so when we do these studies, and we get that letter from the power company. It's going to say how many megawatts are on those lines right now, based on the capacity of what they have. If there is any upgrades, then that will be better than others. It's not adding lines to the base. It's changing some stuff in the existing area. Maybe increasing the bay in the existing substation, things like that. So, we like to simplify and say the power is running through that substation and through those power lines together. And then, I don't even know if those power lines are actually sold in the community here. They might just, it doesn't mean that substation and those lines are powering the Gulf County. But they make the benefit of the experience of making sure that they have capacity to the transmission lines to the substation. So you're not, if there's 300 megawatts available on those lines today, it's going to be added capacity to those lines and will continue to have additional capacity. That's what we do a lot of these articles right now in the data center discussion is we're actually increasing our power infrastructure. We're adding substations, we're improving lines, we're adding power to the grid, which some of you should be doing years ago.
So higher electricity rates for anyone here in Maricopa County is one of the projects.
You guys are doing our work factors just this past week. There were like five people, Elon Musk, because one of them, all the major, Google, OpenAI, creating groups, we're in Washington, Summit Edge, the data centers, they're the biggest ones, will pay the self-financing injuries. So the union was a couple weeks ago, Public Service Commission in January, I believe, voted unanimously to come up, and Georgia Power also, late last year, did a 3-year pause on rate hikes. So we go into why rates have increased in the past few years. They've increased nationwide, whether there's data centers or not. So we'll what? If you don't believe me, a lot of things have happened in the past 12 months to make sure that the data centers stay in.
What contingency plan exists if actual demand exceeds projections of the grid?
Actual demand exceeds
Projections.
Well, we would have to go, so the way it works is we get that level, it'll say, you got 400 megawatts, you got to pay $50 million or whatnot. Technology changes, we use 600, we're going to go do that again. And there's going to be a new number, you got to pay X to get an additional 2 megawatts. Again, we will be purchasing this power. The power, when I say 400 megawatts, that power does not exist today. That power will be generated at a power plant. And I'll be paying for that additional capacity.
I think these next two questions have been touched on. You're going to build your own substation, step down to get the power in the building. Wholesale or retail on the purchase price for electricity? I'm going to think about that question. If power is purchased, will it be wholesale or retail? Right. Y'all get a break when you buy a bulk? You're doing great, Gavin. That's enough.
Around here. So, I think the distinction there is done by the load side. So, at a load of this capacity, typically it's residential, if we call that retail, whereas it's around 13, 14 cents a kilowatt hour. For a load of this magnitude, and that's agreed upon, it's a tri-party agreement. So, we agree with the utility provider has an agreement with the actual power generation producer. So, there's 2 separate agreements on 2 separate rates as well. So, the agreement that we would have with the utility would be most likely in the 8 or 9 cents per kilowatt hour range. So, load is just like anything with the economy, the more you buy in bulk, the lower the
This next set of questions is water usage and cooling systems. Want to go with those? what cooling technology will we use? And I guess we're talking about how exactly we're keeping all these computers cool, closed loop or not.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good question. And I'll start with closed loop as a background before them because I know there's some skepticism. You hear, okay, well, if a development project goes closed loop and they're only going to use X amount of gallons per day, how do we know, right? Like, we can get up here and say, but how do we know? And really all of this is predicated on the chip technology. So the old cooling mechanism that you have in enterprise data centers, early on, quick frame of reference, half of all the data centers in the country today were built over 10 years ago. The other half have been built within the past 10 years. So when I say old, I'm talking, 10 plus years ago. What's an evaporative technology? And that's where water consumption and water usage was the heaviest. You cannot use that cooling system today, all because the chips that we use in today's hyperscale and co-location facilities are so power dense that thermodynamically the air cannot remove the amount of heat that those chips produce. In other words, they have to be cooled down with liquid. And the way we do that is cooling it down with a closed loop system. So, overly simplistic, but just like the radiator in your car, if you leak, has several mechanisms that's going to take fans and coils to cool that liquid down, and then some fans will actually blow that heat away from those lines, and it returns cool water back into the system. And that's not that benefit is, of course, that we use drastically less water, but the primary reason is that that's the only way to cool these power dense.
Maximum daily water consumption, even with a closed loop system,
30,000 gallons a day. That's specifically for full-time employees. So toilet, kitchen, irrigation.
and the water source, do you have any wells out there, or will it be on a city water system, city county water system?
No wells. It'll all be on the municipal supply system.
Our rate's like 7 feet of water missing, right? Our rate's got 7 foot of water missing, it's 7 foot below pool right now.
Yeah, right. I live up in Gainesville by Lake Lanier, and we have facilities.
Sorry, Chris, that wasn't on the bill, I just interjected that.
And to add to that, every jurisdiction does a little bit differently, but most jurisdictions have somewhere around 200 gallons of water usage per household per day. So whether that's an apartment unit or a single-family home, it's about 200, but 30,000 gallons a day. Our consumption is roughly equivalent to 120 households.
And this will do that to Brandon as well, but what can our system maintain long-term as far as your water demand of 30,000 gallons a day?
So our understanding, really from the McDuffie advertisement, is 4 million gallons per day capacity.
How will water use affect residents on well water or local aquifers?
They're completely isolated systems that don't interact. So there will be no one system affecting the other. So we're on the municipal system. We don't touch the water table or the groundwater. So they're isolated systems that don't have any interference. So it smells like.
And I think this question kind of alludes to wells as well, but during drought or any sort of water restriction because of lake levels and whatnot, will residential and agricultural water needs take priority? We don't have any priority on the water source. I think it has something to do with this next question. Blowdown volume, chemical treatment, disposal plan. Does that loop ever discharge water?
No, it doesn't. Within, if you call it the whole loop, there's actually a couple of loops that interact within that system. So there's a loop that just interacts with the silver apps themselves. And that's treated a little bit. metals and conduit, and that's that. And the phone system that's isolated, and there's no leakage in that system, and that interacts with the heat exchanger with the facility water system, and there's a municipal water supply, and that's also closed in this area.
No discharge.
Yes, and we're emergency connection one time, and then we
And that recipe that you just mentioned sounded a lot like geothermal technology as far as heating and cooling systems in homes. That mixture is 90% water, 10%.
yeah.
Again, ask and answer, will any water be discharged into streams, groundwater, or county sewer system? No. Has the county evaluated impacts during drought conditions? You guys will answer that. Has the county evaluated impacts during drought?
We're doing the 30,000 gallons a day for the
And the 4 million that was referenced earlier is actually 6 million per year.
It's 6 million, okay.
I think it's
the permitted capacity is 6 million permitted.
this year, I think it's like, 100%.
This next little group of questions is environmental impact. What environmental studies have been completed and are they publicly available? Thank you, Chris. All right, Ken, we're going to get that to you.
And all those studies, so again, as a part of, unless we probably come up later when we're on that, but Chris kind of mentioned it, but a data center does not get anything. It's not it is, well, the generators. The generators, Chris will use, the generators don't do nothing because of period. The generators, which are emergency and testing, not once a month or test in sections. And when that testing works, and those because of the grow, there's plenty of gas, there's times you can do it. Other than that, the data center itself doesn't present no chemical storage. They're not literally looking into the learning. So really we talk about groundwater, right? So it's during construction, which you have your SWPPD, your clean water pollution prevention permit, then we'll get that bring that down to your density, how we're going to create, how you're going to protect the streams and the film, right? When it rains, it's going to go somewhere. And then really when there's a data center, when it's built, you're mostly talking about the runoff off the roof and off the streets, right? Or off the building, from your cars and all that kind of stuff. Just like here, you'll see, the road gets water gets into the stormwater system and stuff. So you stop from vehicles. So that's what we're talking about. That is all taken in that IDP process is when we have to get all those things. And it's local, state, federal, reviewing and making sure that we build this thing right. We have erosion control in place. I know there's a creek on the back of that side of the citizen comments. If you see there's again, local, state, and federal, 25 buffers on that creek. And we're not impacting that. We're not asking for wetlands credits. We're not asking for anything that is within our stuff. We're going to focus on it and impact it, and we stay away from those buffers. We're going to build where we can, and those buffers are there so that we don't impact this.
A lot of these have been asked and answered, but we'll stress the answer again. Any impact on vegetation, farmland, or pollinators like bees?
It's development, right? So the trees are going to come down, and I want to come back up and say, having more green space in this plan, or no more green space in this plan, then it gets it for right? If it's in the 2,700 acre solar farm that's approved right now, which is this land is part of that, we approved a couple years ago. That's display the land, folks can be moved, so in this instance, we're looking at a little more green space, we don't compete with 100% of the land. So we areas, and how we can present pollinators and everything else here, but as compared, any other type of neighborhood shopping center in Smithfield, which used to be a grocery store, I agree, it's going to open out this for just yet, but it would have any more effect on the pollinator or even than any other.
Airborne emissions on livestock or agriculture nearby.
Rather than, I don't see any study that suggests that.
Are there any requirements for environmental monitoring after construction?
So it's during construction, so I mentioned my SWPPP, so you get weekly monitoring during construction. And then somebody comes out, and this goes for drive four-wheeler or UTV, check the crew, check the short fence, make sure it's not falling down. If it is, make it corrected. Make sure all your stormwater prevention is your route around the inlets is protected. They do it once a week, or after more than, sometimes it's after this or major rainfall. So major rainfall event, you make it from yesterday, or confident. That is when that person decides to say something. You're going to your stormwater system zone, now it's not wrong, it's going in the system. We would believe that, in a condition, because it's not produced yet, that we would continue to monitor for 2 years after stabilization. So we continue to monitor that creek, continue to get that permit active, and we can monitor it on a weekly basis and after the week.
Any radiation emitted?
None that I haven't seen a study or anything that it's a computer in your house. There's no radiation from
All right, our next group of questions is air quality generators and emissions, and how many diesel generators will be installed?
So the older size probably have 100 generators at most. Again, those are purely backup. You don't use these generators for just everyday energy. You couldn't possibly do it. So if all of our power is out and, kind of home goes out, it's just a catastrophe, we can create on as an emergency. Other than that, maybe it's going out once a month. Again, not all at one time, to make sure that we're right, we're not using and those are, we've agreed also, we can listen to 4 generators, which are easiest way to explain it to all the way to the hospital. It's the cleanest you can possibly got. And they're regulated by the EPA, make sure the irrigation is as clean as possible.
And you're exercising them monthly for how long?
About 3 weeks on average. And then we do to a certain time. We want to
This is what are the permitted emission levels, and I guess you're talking about the generators. And you kind of answered that.
Yeah. What I would agree to is that's not even required, that's what we would agree to. And so same regulations with the football hospital that I just passed, and I think I wouldn't make any more comment about the generators and the condition we agreed to, that we would have them either shielded or nothing about visible, shielded, or the responsibility from the residential clusters that we do.
Georgia EPD approved the emissions plan.
The emissions, I guess, still generated out of the
What plans exist to monitor air quality and noise during, again, generator work?
So air quality is new, and there to make sure we have the generator, that's why we do a test, right? So right from that, make sure that we're not, as you see this in your sample of gas and talk about that. Your interaction emissions
And quality.
Noise, we agreed to adjust the limit along our residential agricultural property boundaries. And the 5 portions that we mentioned in the conditions. We will do a study prior to construction, and you see what it is right now, what's the ambient noise level there now. Our plans will show, these generators, this kind of load, and also give you some kind of idea on what that noise level would be, and then we are within our CO to we make sure we do that. If for any reason you built it, and we're ready to go on the lights, and we're at 75 and not 70, you can have burns, you can have parapet walls, you can have, there are other mitigations. We would, of course, be able to get our power and make sure we do that happening. We've also agreed to a 300-foot undisturbed buffer along those properties.
Again, this is a group of questions pertaining to noise, lighting, and quality of life, and you started answering this, but the noise level that the cooling equipment produces at the property line is that 70 dB.
It'll all be met together, that we wouldn't be over that 70 dB. Again, what Chris mentioned, that older systems are louder because they're very cool. So that's a whole bunch of ECUs, right? When you're standing by yours and get it pretty on. So these are the new ones that are a little higher, and yes, there is some of that. Really different than the pressure rating. Is going to have cooling. And some of the cooling is just for the office coolers, the break rooms, the knock-the-backs and all. But again, everything will be, we're basically saying wholesale one two.
That 70 dB would be what you hear on a busy city street or a busy interstate?
It's kind of the conversation we want to have right now.
What mitigation measures will reduce the constant low-frequency noise as a particular home?
Yeah, I think that is I don't know what the word for that kind of question is. I think that's a single measure home. The power lines have a way home. Those are the things. That is where it does not produce from everyone. The HVAC equipment from
the air coolers apparently do.
Not that they don't. But it's not an electrical home, right? It's the HVAC.
Will the facility operate with 24-hour lighting, and how will light spill be controlled?
We will do 24-hour operation, security, transport, security, we've agreed to a condition of low spill, double line lighting, and that, really, we use that photometric, right, which is really what so you'll have it on paper, then it will still, it has numbers, grades and lines on it. Again, 300-foot understood buffer is going to really help along those property lines. But we'll have plans, we'll have everything to show that it's going to be zero with that property line.
Could noise or lighting affect wildlife behavior or migration?
Again, no more than we ever development, right? Again, this is the development. I don't want to pretend it's going to be undeterred people. But let's compare it to Ferguson versus anything else that we can build out there in the rest of the country, right? If we're going to develop, we're already going to develop 700-acre solar farm. Some of the wildlife
nearby property values, how will the problem affect the value of people's adjacent land?
Yeah, again, how do you like this site is because, on the kind of forest lands we're adjacent to solar farm and we're out, and we're taking proper precautions from the neighbors to the north. They were on land and some single-family homes. They actually weren't along the property line, but they could build along there if they wanted to. So we think with the existing infrastructure that's already there, and it's good dirt road right now, we're going to pave that road. Again, the solar farm today, we don't think it's negatively impacted. I think not a tax discussion, but I think with the revenue it's pretty low,
roads, traffic, and infrastructure, what is the projected construction traffic volume and duration?
So the duration would be about 3 years from start to finish. And then we wouldn't start, we get this approved, and then we go into engineering and all those approvals to get an LDP. That's probably going to take a year to get the LDP, and then when we get started. Like I said, we kind of mapped out two, I think we revised one of them, because I was on one of the conditions. I think there's a second where I was one with the road is used. Construction, probably at the most, you're probably going to have about, at the very most, 500 people on site during the construction. And then like I said, we use state roads, of course, on 20, and then state roads all the way to the local group, and then we agreed to host the program. And this amount of money to be used for the road improvements.
So traffic volume, I guess this is alluding to concrete trucks or were they on-site construction vehicles?
I understand. I mean, this is listening up to a current where we probably wouldn't even make sense of it. And these are pretty tough walls, so it's not a big, there's concrete flooring and everything, there's floors which are not concrete, so I wouldn't imagine we on site.
And these are road names that may be impacted, and the worry is heavy traffic from construction. Longville Road, Randall Hunt Road, and Hampton Davis Road. You think you're going to pay Randall Hunt?
Randall Hunt would be, that would be our main access.
Will the developer do a traffic study? If so, how will you mitigate any construction traffic with normal traffic?
If required, yes, I think one was required, one was required, yes, if required, part of the LDP process, absolutely. And whatever mitigation, whatever it says those roads could handle, if it's a left turn lane, right turn lane, happy to do that. We all feel bad about whatever.
This is asking actually also, will roads require paving, widening, or upgrades just on the hunt?
Yes. Yes, every other road is like I said, a state road or a two-way road you can use.
And who pays for the improvements?
Like I said, we put a condition on.
Will the developer pay 100% of infrastructure costs, including utilities and fiber lines?
Fiber lines are at the property owner. Don't need to extend fiber.
But y'all pay for it.
We pay this private.
Substation.
Water station, substation, FAA, power, paper, offshore, paper, on the road, we can access the downtown big road, so that would be
Emergency response and safety. What additional demands will this facility place on fire, EMS, and law enforcement?
Additional, again, my answer is, no more than any other development, right? The fire wheels, we're going to be on there 2 or 3 minutes, but we're going to have fire suppression. I think that came up last week, and you already would, but I think we would do that in a condition as well. Inside, outside, fire suppression system. I think having the road code is going to help, in the kind of emergency services getting into it. But again, this one doesn't take, more of a strain on emergency services than, say, neighborhood would be.
On law enforcement, will you have on-site security of your people?
Their
people. Hazardous materials or fuels, how will they be stored on site?
No hazardous material, fuel is generator diesel. And it's stored just like the diesel fuel station. Permitted, tanks,
Underground. Fire suppression, you said yes, that would be there. Response plan for battery or generator fires.
Powering is not, the wood power is building about the energy storage facility next to us, but we don't have anything for battery generator fires. Absolutely, all of these things, and it's
All right, and there again, governance, transparency, and the public process. What independent studies have been conducted versus developer-provided studies? Independent studies rather than yours.
What independent studies have been done to, as it relates to just this season?
I think that's the question.
None more than.
So the studies, your company or the end user is providing those studies, the developer.
We provided some studies, we provided studies, whatever is required to get our comments, including voting index.
I guess they're asking, are y'all writing the studies or paying for the studies, or are they from an independent company?
Yeah, we would contract with an independent company. Like a sales study, for instance, we don't do that. We have sales focused provided, and we can do it itself, it does this.
All right. Who would typical preferred end user be? I'm sorry, the grammar is not quite right on this action. Who would your typical or preferred end user be? Federal government, financial institution, logistical, or social media? Who would end up out there?
It's a good question, and one that always comes up, and I just say for, shopping, figuring out in the grocery store, how much do you actually go out and find the best spot for public? They rely on developers to go find the best price for them, knowing that it meets all of the site requirements, traffic levels, demographics, incomes, you name it, for a particular site. The developer does everything to get that site ready, knowing that Aldi or Publix or Kroger or one of the grocery stores is going to take that spot. It's the same concept here. The national vacancy rate for data centers in the U.S. right now is right about 1%. It's virtually, there's no vacant space in any data center right now. So the end user, well, they're not in contact with anyone at this stage in the process because it's chipping over the other. So mainly the power, but if the stuff is not, nothing is ready for the end user to commit to something like that, but it's still going to be someone just about the nature of things, someone that we want to use directly.
And do y'all know who that person is, or you know who the prospects are, I guess, or you would build it?
We have a short list of potential partners, but it could be any.
And I think this question is trying to nail it down. Would it be government or the private sector that would be setting up shop here? Would it be a Google or Facebook? Or
We don't know at this time.
And then they drill down again and ask, are there any prospects of end users that you'd be able to share? That would be a hard no.
It's still no.
And then the last part of the questions, Chase, if you all want to get ready to do anything differently at the end, what annual public reporting will the operator provide regarding water use, power consumption, jobs created, and tax contributions?
Most of that will be public record and reported annually by the jurisdiction, but we'll report whenever is required by
56 minutes, Chase. 74 questions.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm impressed.
And what are we going to do next?
We get a background share, put some notes cards in the back. While y'all are answering the questions, if the public wants to jot down questions on the week of it, we can do a church offering and practice that. Any questions that I have, Carolyn? what's the total megawatt?
We speaking to that microphone and the radio.
Bill Joplin speaking. Bill Joplin, come in.
What is the total megawatt for 3 phases? You said there was like 1.5, 1.5, is that right? Or
Yeah. 400 megawatts.
500 megawatts?
Yes, correct.
Okay, that was my question.
What is that compare to? What is that over generate? Any ideas on what
The latest unit, I think, is a couple gigawatts. That's one unit. Yeah.
What other industry would use 400 megawatts? Is it mainly something like a data center? Is there any industry that uses that much power?
St. Georgia, there's been a lot of battery manufacturers, the Hyundai plant, the SK joint venture up in Collegeville, and the SK battery up in Commerce. Those use anywhere between 20 to 80 megawatts.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Bill Joplin is speaking. I'm talking to my radio.
What was the situation I was thinking about, if this 2-year degree required for this, we're on a vocational school, could possibly handle that. Have y'all thought about contacting them at all?
Well, absolutely. We always try to, from the construction phase and into the stabilization phase, full-time operations, we always try to partner locally when possible.
It was about 3 years, so it's a 2-year degree, so I'd like to work that out.
The time has worked.
You said you have undisturbed buffers. I almost don't have a disturbed buffer with plants and trees, so that you don't have disturbance. I think that's in the planning and zoning.
So the undisturbed portion, we always prefer, especially with a site like this as it lays today, the natural vegetation and buffer is much more efficient at sound decay than disturbing the vegetation and building up, synthetic or artificial buffers. So, yeah, we're looking at the natural woodlands.
We're not trying to have planning and zoning, so there's nothing there right now. Right.
North side is where some of there's acreage across the creek that backs up to residential farms. Right. Like the land is that was knocked up. Or was knocked out on the creek. Yeah. But on the all other sides around us, besides that side, is either Georgia Power or the solar farm.
That's right, so the solar farm is basically surrounded, so
it almost takes kind of the bottom 2 thirds, and Georgia Power is kind of goes up upper left quadrant, and the remaining pieces for the division for a couple of residential neighborhoods.
yeah, okay. Are you guys planning on leasing this building or selling it outright to the end user?
Yeah, so it's a good question. They do some of both, and even one company doesn't necessarily choose for, Google, for example. We're not affiliated with them, but sometimes they lease and sometimes they buy. It really depends on the project.
All right, any other questions from the public? It's pleasant tonight. This was asked and answered, but if you will repeat where your 30,000 gallons of water goes, you're using closed loop. You're using 30,000 gallons to flush toilets.
That's just full-time employees and stuff. Usually the rule of thumb is 50 gallons per full-time employee per day, multiplied by our 150 to 200 employees.
The county's plan, and I guess this is more for the commissioners, if the data center does in fact produce that $25 million worth of revenue annually, what will happen with the property taxes? Is any bit of that going to get rid of school and property taxes, or will it be used in a different way? I thought that's the question.
So, I'll answer this. Brandon is already running the numbers. The school board would have to make their own decision on, what they will do with property taxes. I think that from the conversations I've had with the board, it sounds like everybody's in favor of reducing everyone's property tax with the additional revenue. Other counties have looked at homestead, so leave the millage rate so that commercial and industrial continue to pay in and homestead gets a break. We haven't finalized or had any in-depth conversations on that.
This person was thinking maybe it would cause property taxes to be elevated, but that wouldn't be the case with it.
The property taxes would
go up.
This would be added just like you add an industrial improvement to the highway.
And then I guess the impact would also be what guarantee would the public have that the commission would use the money to lower taxes instead of find something else to buy.
I can only speak for Trace. I would not be in favor of growing our budget by $25 million.
Somebody did ask again the net tax revenue for the Davis Center annually was $25 million. That's our estimate.
We have estimate for the county-owned school system.
That's the total we're coming in out of the Davis Center, but
Well, when you guys split out between the different taxes, you got your ad valorem for the county and the ad valorem for the school. So looking, if you have roughly $1.5 billion, you're around 25 to 30 million on what you're looking at, depending on the value of the personal property that we can build.
so this is kind of a hazmat question as far as the computers. I see chips catching on fire and burning. Is there some sort of measures in place to safely clean up what's left? If the computer catches on fire, is that a hazardous situation that has to be dealt with, like asbestos or?
There's, particularly when it comes to fires and fire suppression and fire mitigation, fire cleanup, this is all very regulated and codified. There's standard rules, particularly in two codes that are bypassed specifically for data centers and IT infrastructure and housing. And it's a multi-phase suppression system and cleanup system. It's all very detailed in this code. But if anyone needs some nighttime reading, I'm trying to send them.
This is a good question. Why here? It does seem like there's been an awful lot of applications in Georgia. The question went on to ask, what benefits does this provide to the community at large that isn't monetary? So why here?
It's a fair question, and really, it seems like, especially with the way our news algorithms and social media algorithms work, it's very in your face, right? Right when you click on one thing or stop scrolling through something and look at one thing, the algorithm locks in and says, oh, well, they want to see more of that, right? So it creates this sort of echo chamber and snowball effect to where I click on Data Center article and all I see in my social media feed is other Data Center.
So they're all over the U.S. They're not just flooding into Georgia now.
They're all over the U.S. Part of the reason that Georgia has become a hub for it is because the state level sales tax exemption on servers inside the building. So there's some incentive there. We've kind of chart Northern Virginia is still the epicenter and the highest density data center region in the world, but Georgia has become more largely in part because it's got sales tax credit, but the main draw is our grid stability and reliability. Georgia Power and the EMCs, relatively speaking, do a fantastic job of maintaining our infrastructure, and that's what is attractive to people.
They went on.
Yeah, exactly, kind of like Karen alluded to, you draw the comparison or the distinction between a neighborhood, for example, in most jurisdictions, a neighborhood with a next ticket, a next deficit on his house, on premises. Madison, on the other hand, for every, like Cameron said, for every 4 cents spent on the data center for municipal services, you actually gain about 25x back on that. And that is Loudoun County, Virginia, most of the, it's pretty unique trade-off in urban versus the actual impact economically that
Another part of this question was, if there is any harm to the community or the environment, who would that accountability fall on? The end user, or I guess that would be determined by if you purchase at least what you do?
I guess we have to be a little more precise in terms of what quantify, qualify, what exactly, what impact we're describing. Environmental impact.
It said both, community and environmental. I guess environmental would go back to the booze and the deer and light pollution and that kind of stuff. If there was someone that wanted to have something done about one of those concerns, would it be the developer or the end user to resolve that?
It would really come down to the jurisdictional authority and that highlights and that's not an elusive answer. What we like to say is, even though, again, just because this comes up in our social media feeds and it's a hot and very forefront topic of conversation right now, it feels like when we're here tonight and when we're here at planning commission meetings and board of commission meetings, it feels like it's sort of the end of the process, and this is the last date that the developers have before we start building. When in reality, this is the very beginning. Just because we go through a few steps does not even guarantee that necessarily that the project will come to completion. We are about, after this is probably 5% of the whole project of what we have to do. Most of the regulation and working with most of the agencies is well before this. This is just the beginning of is this going to be suitable and compatible for the area and the goals of the jurisdiction.
You said there'd be no radiation issue at all. But do these computers use RF to communicate with other computers? Or this person felt like there had been some evidence to suggest there was RF radiation inside data centers.
The low-grade radiation, as far as these things that have been done, are far exceeded by the actual current electromagnetic radiation from those long-haul transmission lines that exist over there. Yeah, exactly. Those are well studied. There's a lot of medical studies done on that. Part of the reason why those wires, not the ones that we have in our neighborhoods and here on Main Street, but the ones that are out by us, they're up so high, largely in part to mitigate that grounding effect, but also it's a very distinct radius around those lines of any field that it produces is contained to sort of cylinder around those lines. So that's the biggest radiator effect, and that's what it is.
How do you come up with the number of buildings that you want to build, 6 versus 3?
Good question. So the way these buildings lay out, you see a building that looks like a warehouse from the bird's eye view. A lot of that, maybe most of that actually, is the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing to cool the facility. So the actual data center halls where the server racks are stored is just a part of each of these buildings. So usually, it depends on some combination of the site and the design that the end user ultimately wants. Usually, each building you want to be around 150,000 square feet. So, or in combination of that. $350,000, $450,000.
Interesting question. The distribution area for data centers are going all over the world, or do you have any idea what connections are being made to the computers here locally? Are they around the globe, around the world?
Yeah, so in terms of what should this project go here, what is this project be connected to?
They asked specifically the distribution area of the data center, so I'm thinking it's connected to the internet, so it's connected to the world.
Yes. Yeah.
Maybe I'll wonder when Randy Googles something, is it coming out of my data center in Thompson, or is it coming out of Columbia County?
Yeah, good question. So it depends, and it's in a way geographically agnostic, and that's because of the technology of fiber. To try to roughly around the speed of, it's incredibly fast. So the actual latency effect for most of the end users, you can say from Atlanta to Northern Virginia, is about your radius where you have a negligible latency effect. So, clear if you get on the internet, depending on what application we're using and what AI we're using or whatever, it could have any number of data centers within the entire region or country outside the world.
I think this is asking answered. If you needed water infrastructure, y'all would pay for that? To get you 30,000 gallons a day.
Yeah.
And then I had some questions that starred out of these 8, 9, 10, 11 questions. Does Elon Musk own the data centers that are currently being built in our area today, or the developers always do it and then sell them to them?
I think any combination of ways. I don't think he personally owns any of them. I was on a podcast and sold his own house, so I don't think he likes to own things personally, but quite a little bit that makes his project.
All right. How about bots? We have bots out there. I won't read it verbatim. Will bots be taking people's jobs? Or that number that you mentioned, will that be humans? Certified humans or certified bots?
Certified red phone.
With the telemarketers that use bots, are they operating with the assistance of these data centers, or those are standalone systems? That's a risk of that. Will it be manned? You will have a staff out there. How many people did you say, Cameron? 125 people. Bots won't take their jobs. Will current factory service and other jobs performed by humans be replaced with bots? Not going to use the bots?
Great question. We're not planning on it. I think those jobs are well paid for a long time.
But AI is coming out of these data centers. Artificial intelligence is a data center, right?
Artificial intelligence are built because of data centers. So large language models and computing models take lots of compute power to do what they do when you have
search engines use data centers. If you Google, you use a data center. It's going through a data center.
Conversation is going to be a data center.
How do data centers work? I don't know if we have time for you to fully explain that.
Simple answer.
Hey, we're going to be out of there later on.
No, simply put, it's just a bunch of computers and, kind of like gaming computers that are laptops, for example. You may think it hotter quicker than just a normal computer, pretty great. These servers run high processing power to power the users that use every day, so it's long.
How do data centers make their money? I mean, I understand how you guys will make your money when you find an end user, but is it the dollar per click kind of thing? How do they monetize this operation?
It's all because of what we use in together. So the subscriptions we pay for, the apps we use, if we use a free app like Facebook, they get most of their revenue from ad dollars on there. So it all is driven by what we use in our phones and our computers every single day. So ultimately, the end user leasing or owning the data center space, just basic economic analysis, they'll make more money off buying their subscriptions and services than they will paying for the data center space.
The rest of these questions, I asked you to start questions out of these 11, but you've answered almost every one of the others. Are there any health concerns, respiratory, cardiovascular, or anything associated with cancer, like with data centers?
The only known components that have ever been questioned that are related to data centers are long-haul transmission lines, which are there today, and the frequency of the field produced by those, and the generators, which are heavily regulated and proven today. And no other component has any influence on healthcare.
So compared to Plant Vogel, FRS, Fort Gordon, you guys are just coming in the woods and remember how to
We are
safe by comparison.
a computer hunting in the woods, albeit a very wonderful.
Thanks, that's all my questions.
All right.
Mr. Gay, Chairman Gay.
Thank you, Mike, for doing this tonight and for live streaming this on WTXS. Thank you all for being here and giving the public this opportunity. We look forward to this opportunity. So with that, if nobody has any further questions, the board has no further questions,
Just one, maybe just follow up. So I know we mentioned Georgia Power a little bit, correct? Because the substation was connected to the power, but Jefferson Energy would actually be the power provider, correct?
Good question. So, this site is unique in the sense that it is with territory. So, part of it sits in Jefferson Energy's territory, part of it sits in Georgia Power territory. And the way it works in the state of Georgia, it's a customer choice state. There's a caveat which I'll get to in a minute, but meaning if a customer requires a load that exceeds 100 megawatts, then they can choose, even if they're not in one or the other's territory, which provider they ultimately want to purchase the power from. So, but the caveat is it's a mutual relationship as well. So, in this case, we could choose Georgia Power or Jefferson Energy, but that doesn't mean that they have to choose us. So, it's still a agreement that has to be worked out.
And neither one has confirmed they can supply or cannot supply the power.
No, they don't do that until the studies that Cameron referenced earlier, and there are 3-phase studies that both of those utilities use, either one, and those take anywhere from 6 months to 8 or 9 months. And that looks at it kind of spreads out by geographical focus. So the first phase looks at the substation next to us and the lines that go through our site, and they analyze the thermal ratings and the conductivity ratings and the bays at that substation and determine, what capacity are there and what improvements, if any, would be made. And then they look out for the second and third phase for products in the network. Because, whether here or the grid out, up in Hall County where I live, or over in Alabama or the rest of the country, the grid's all connected. Now there's some balancing authorities and some mechanisms to, create boundaries a little bit, so to speak, on the grid, but that second phase of the study looks at a whole grid and says, okay, what, if it were a complex network of pipes with marbles in it, and the marbles were like, see what happens when we put all the marbles, quote unquote, into that system, where does everything start to flow, and that's what the second study looks like. So, so to answer your question, neither transmission energy nor Georgia Power, until those studies are conducted, will even offer, even essentially say what capacity they do or don't have, because they have to solve for that first, and then it becomes reliability.
Again, thank you, Mike. Thank you to you all for being here tonight. Folks, if you have any questions or concerns, reach out to the elected officials. We will meet next Tuesday night at 6:30 in this room for our regular scheduled commission meeting, and there'll be a public hearing before that meeting begins. We have a motion to adjourn. So moved. Mr. Joffrey, bring it back, Mr. Howell.